Hi, I'm Kevin Jeter. Welcome to this week's edition of the Nation's Capital Sports Show. We have Chris Jerry, Afsheen Benab, Vincent Charles, and introducing Gary Digital Williams. He's not new to the Washington, D.C. broadcast community, and we're going to talk about Gary a little bit in the show and learn a little bit about him, but he's new to our AIM audience right here at the Nation's Capital Sports Show. So, gentlemen, let's get started talking about what we enjoy, talking about the best and the most on this Sunday afternoon, and that is sports. Let's talk about the NFL. $765 million reasons in the concussion suit for the NFL. Now, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell says that this was a good deal. It was a long time in the making, but Chris, I got to tell you, for an industry that does over $9 billion per year, sounds like someone got gypped in the process. Although, some could say, well, at least the players got something.
Well, it's probably a good deal, Kevin, for the players who were part of that lawsuit, and there's a lot of players getting up in age and they don't have any ability to take care of themselves. For those people, it was a good deal. For the future players and the current players, probably not so much.
All right, Afsheen.
Yeah, it's really chump change for the NFL, and the more you read into it, it's chumpier than you think, because it's $765 million. The NFL doesn't even have to admit to the findings that they to their research in concussions and how that all started with brain trauma and everything like that. A lot of these players didn't know what they were getting into way back when, but they'll get about $170,000 per player for at least the first 3 years of this suit. So it didn't really add up to much, and the NFL got away with it.
That's right, Vincent.
I agree with you, Afsheen. A small fraction of what the NFL could probably give these guys, but like you guys say, it's good for the older players who have been suffering. And it's going to be good for the league because they are covering themselves to an extent from future lawsuits.
Well, what I find funny about this, Gary, is that the league's Mild Traumatic Brain Injury Committee, which was led for more than a decade, it was led by a rheumatologist.
It's ridiculous. I mean, the fact that it was a no-brainer that it should have somebody who knew something about brains to be involved in the suit. But it just made no sense to me. And I feel for a lot of the guys who have passed on, who had situations where these brain concussions caused them to do some things they would normally not do. Junior Seau, Dave Durison committing suicide. It makes no sense. And look at some of the guys who now have Parkinson's disease and other things. They didn't know that going into the pros, and that's an issue there.
That's right.
Yeah, Gary couldn't have said it much better. I mean, that's exactly the issue. I just still have a concern about the current players, though. Now, they know a little bit more, but the big key of this was the fact that the NFL didn't have to share any information. That's something that could really have cost them a lot of money going down the future for future lawsuits.
And it's interesting how they got a deal done, Afsheen, before the start of the NFL 2013-2014 season.
Yeah, ironic, isn't it? But they don't have to share any of that information. And there are a lot of people that were saying that if this lawsuit carried through, now this was done in a hearing, not an actual court trial. But there are a lot of people that said if it did go to court, that the players or the class action lawsuit side would have lost anyway, and they would have had to pay more out in legal fees and such. But it came out to about $1 billion overall, which, like you mentioned at the outset, Kev, $10 billion a year for the NFL, that's chump change.
That's right. And under the settlement, individual rewards would be capped at $5 million for men with Alzheimer's disease and $4 million for those diagnosed after their deaths with a brain condition called chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
Brain issues. Yeah.
Brain issues.
A whole lot of brain issues. Yeah. And these are the issues that caused Dave Durison, Junior Seau to commit suicide and others. So they don't have to share information because the NFL is saying, well, we're making the game safer, and we're doing things, and we're trying to adjust the game to make it safer for the players. But it's very hard to do that in a full contact game such as professional football.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's a contact game. What do you do? I mean, but it seems like to me the NFL would at least want to share that information. But now that they're not sharing that information, where do you begin? Do you begin with this selection of the newer players in the NFL and you test them out and you start your research from there?
Yeah, I think one thing you can do, which the NFL is against, is cutting away some of those preseason games. Another thing is you don't want to go to an 18-season regular season, which the NFL really wants badly. I think those are things that you just don't want to do. And the more rules and regulations you make, then the game is going to look softer to a lot of the fans. And I tell you what, I know it's a violent sport, but that's what the fans want to watch. It brings them to the TV set. It takes them to the stadiums.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. The owners don't want their preseason games to go away because that's pure profit for them. That is the only time that they're able to get all of the profit. The players do not get paid. So,
yeah, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's about how much money they make.
Vincent.
Now, you can't take the physical element out of the game, like Gary was saying. But what you can do is try to make the game safer in some ways. And you got to think about a lot of these older guys that have suffered. You remember back in the day, you know, there were head slaps. There was a lot of things going on. There was a lot of hitting of the receivers, you know, right? A lot of bumping and checking, things like that. So the game was more dangerous back then. So some of these guys, maybe that's why they're suffering, but I think the game will become safer.
Well, I think the NFL also profits from that violence, and they've done that for years, going way back to the violent world of Sam Huff. I mean, they profit from that violence.
That's right.
And they can't get away from it, Vincent. They can't get.
You speak about Sam Huff, Gary. I mean, there was an actual story done on
Right.
Sam Huff
Violent world of Sam
way
Huff,
back.
yeah.
An actual TV story done on him, and it had like millions of viewers back there at that time. I think it was on CBS television at the time. But
It was called
crazy.
Violent World of Sam
The
Huff.
Violent World of Sam Huff. It was a TV show.
All
But
right, we're going to let you have the last word on this.
But then again, from now as we carry on, these guys know what they're getting into, and the NFL is telling them.
Well, we know that it's a violent sport, and no matter how much they do to dummy it down, there's still going to be contact. I mean, that's the nature of the sport, as we all alluded to. It's a contact sport. What do you expect? I mean, it can't turn into flag football or touch football. That can't. People won't go for that.
Exactly.
Can you imagine? You know, NFL fans, the legion of NFL fans that say, "Hey, this is garbage. We don't want touch football. Come on now."
Yeah, but you know,
sir.
there might be a market for a touch football league. What do you think?
I'll take credit for that. It started with us here at the Nation's Capital Sports Show. All right, let's talk a little bit about the burgundy and gold, the Washington Redskins. Wow. Let's dive in a little bit about their defensive weaknesses and offense weaknesses or strengths. And we'll start with you, Afsheen.
Yeah, well, the line is pretty strong, the defensive line, especially with Bowen in there, Cofield, and the linebackers with, of course, Arakpo and Ryan Kerrigan, who's really coming into his own, I think, in his third season. The problem you have are with the DBs, the safeties. Is Merriweather going to play or is he not going to play? Seems back and forth with that. That means Reed Doughty's going to have to play. What's going to happen with Bakari Rambo? Is he going to have to start as a rookie? That's where the big problem is right now. So if they get a pass rush on the quarterback week in and week out, then the safeties and the DBs, they won't have to worry about anything.
Well, I'll tell you about Arakpo. If he can stay healthy for one particular season without going down, that's what we should be watching for. That is my concern. Chris.
Yeah, well, you know, offensively, I just think that the Redskins are in good shape if Robert Griffin III can
Super Bowl?
Super Bowl. If he can, you know, manage to play on a level that he played last year, and nobody really knows. You know, he's taking no snaps, and so we'll wait and see how this is going to come out. But I think they'll be okay offensively.
Gary.
This team will go as far as the defense will take them. I really believe it is on the defensive line. Offense will take care of itself. They have all the tools there, and even if Robert Griffin III goes down, Kirk Cousins, if he's healthy, he'll be there. Right?
Right.
Even Rex
I agree.
Grossman, Pat White. I mean, they're keeping 4 quarterbacks for a reason. But defensively, I agree with Afsheen. If the defensive backs are not healthy, this team's in trouble, regardless of how many points they put on the field.
Vincent.
Potential, just like the Nationals. The Redskins have a lot of potential. In agreement, I'm going to chime in. Yes, the defensive backs, that's a concern. Another concern is who's going to return punts and kicks. The Redskins, they might wind up missing Brandon Banks because with Richard Crawford going down, that's a major question mark. Offensively, a lot of potential there. Good balance with Alfred Morris coming back after a 1,600-yard season. And we all know what Griffin can do, so potential.
I think Chris Thompson's going to return those kicks. I think he's going to surprise you, Vincent. I think he's already surprised the team in training camp and in preseason. And game time, we'll see what he can do. But don't be surprised if he is one of the stalwarts on this team.
All right, let's talk about the Redskins in terms of their NFC schedule. Their division rivals in the Giants and Philadelphia, and of course the Dallas Cowboys. Let's start with the Dallas Cowboys. Tony Romo signed to a new contract. Dez Bryant is supposed to be the savior this time because he's a little bit more mature. what's going to happen with the Redskins versus the Dallas Cowboys, Afsheen?
Well, that's the biggest rivalry in the NFL, as usual, right? It's like Michigan, Ohio State, and all that kind of stuff. USC, UCLA when they're good. But Dallas, I think, is going to be really good. I think the NFC East overall is going to be better than a lot of people think, especially the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm interested to see what the Eagles do. But the Cowboys are going to have a good team, and I think Romo he's got to produce this year for him to become one of the great quarterbacks in the NFL, at least this season.
All right, you guys just jump on in.
Okay, I think the Cowboys, they're going to be decent, but I don't think they're going to have enough to overtake the Redskins. I figure they're going to go lower in the NFC East. They got a weaker offensive line, and that's when Romo has trouble, when that offensive line isn't doing as well. If their offensive line does not stay healthy, they got problems. Eagles, same thing. New coach, kind of a different system, but is Michael Vick going to be that reliable or that durable?
All right, so right now we're talking about the Dallas Cowboys, but I'm glad that you jumped to that, Gary.
Well, I'm going to jump to the Eagles as well because I agree. I think Michael Vick maybe it looks like anyway that the offense that they're putting in, that Chip Kelly's putting in there in Philadelphia, may suit Michael Vick and his athletic ability. So I'm watching them to see what's going to happen with them. I think they're going to be the question mark of the whole NFC East.
Chris?
Well, I just think like a broken clock is right twice a day. I think Dallas Cowboys, this may be their year. I think this could be the year for all the troubles they've had. I think Dallas could be there. But, just like the Redskins, let's not forget that there was a point last year we thought they wouldn't even make the playoffs, and they ended up winning the division. So it's going to be interesting in the NFC East this year.
All right, so let's talk about the Redskins against everyone else, non-NFC rivals. And we were talking a little bit before the show about their prospect against Green Bay.
Yeah, this year in the rotation they play the NFC North, the NFC East does, and they've got the Green Bay Packers, and Aaron Rodgers is arguably the best quarterback in the NFL, and Green Bay is going to be a Super Bowl contender as usual, so that they've got to do this up in Green Bay. The thing is, they get to do it sooner rather than later when it's not going to be cold or freezing on that tundra in Lambeau Field.
And this is the time of the season when offense is ahead of the defense, Gary.
Yeah, the AFC West also involved in this, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the Redskins go throughout the season because they play some very varied opponents throughout the year, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, they are going to have an interesting season, and of course they play my team, the 49ers. And that's one of the good things about the Redskins winning the division.
I was going to get to that.
Now
That was
they
going to
get
be
a
the next
harder
thing. I was going
schedule.
to talk about harder schedule. Well, this is what you get when you win your division. So, it's a test for the Redskins to really be successful, and hopefully they'll be able to do some things this season.
They also play the other first-place team out of the NFC South, which is the Atlanta Falcons, and they are also a Super Bowl contender this year.
That's right. Yeah, they're getting all types of stuff thrown at them. Vincent.
And speaking about a varied schedule and the tough side of the schedule is they got 4 teams that were in the playoffs: San Francisco, Green Bay, the Falcons, and the Broncos. But then they're playing the AFC West: KC, the Chargers, and Oakland. Who's the 4th team in the AFC West?
Well, the Denver Broncos.
Denver.
The Broncos, we all know what the Broncos did to those Ravens. Was it, excuse me.
Those were hummingbirds.
Was it, who was it? John Elway?
Yeah.
It looked like him, didn't it?
Yeah. You mentioned the Kansas City. It shouldn't be forgotten that Andy Reid knows a lot about the Redskins because
Yes, he
of being
does. Yeah, he
a
does.
coach.
Yes, he does.
So that could be interesting.
And he's got one of the toughest running backs in the NFL if he can stay healthy. Watch out for KC as a
All
surprise.
right. So we're going to go around the table, talk about your Super Bowl picks. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about the option set that's run that's become famous in the NFL.
The read option.
Yeah, the read option. And so I've read all types of stuff, and how coaches can't really contain it and stop it. And Robert Griffin III plays good in that. A couple of quarterbacks that actually play good in that. And it's become the thing for the NFL. Gary,
it's not new to college football.
That's
of course,
right.
Because I remember at Howard they ran something very similar back in the days of Willie Jeffries called the dive option. It's very similar. I mean, the quarterback Leader Bowles could run 20 yards down the field before pitching it off to Harvey Reid
Yes,
back in
right.
the day.
Yeah,
I remember that.
So this is not a new situation for football. It's definitely a newer situation for pro football, and I think you're going to see a lot more of the college game coming into the pro ranks now to match the talent that's there.
Here. Let's talk about the 4-star quarterbacks, elite quarterbacks that did good for the 2012 season. Robert Griffin III for the Washington Redskins, of course, Andrew Luck, Indianapolis Colts, Chris Boyd, Colin Kaepernick, and Russell Kaepernick of the San Francisco Giants. I want to get that in
49ers.
there. 49ers, there you go. And, of course, Russell Wilson of the Seattle Seahawks. There we go. I don't know
You know what?
what's wrong
Seattle
there.
probably would love that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I mean, so you got these quarterbacks here, marquee quarterbacks. What is your expectations for those three quarterbacks? We'll start with you, Vincent.
I think Colin Kaepernick, he's going to go to the head of the class. That guy is very talented with the read option, but he can also be a drop-back passer too. So I look for big things from Kaepernick again.
All right.
I think all of them are going to do well. In the pocket with Andrew Luck, the other three quarterbacks, whether they want to throw out of the pocket or run via the read option or run just because they have to scramble, I think all four quarterbacks will have a good second year. I don't see anything wrong with what they're doing so far.
Gary?
The combination of intelligence, athleticism that they all have, really. I'm a huge Russell Wilson fan myself, but all four of them just have tremendous athletic and intelligence on the quarterback situation, and there are more coming. I mean, Terrell Pryor is here now, so you're looking at him as well. So there's some great young quarterbacks in the league.
All right, so we need to note this. Although Gary is wearing that Saints
Saints
jersey,
jersey.
he is a Redskins fan, true and true. I wanted to point that
It's
out.
the only one I could find. I'm
There,
sorry.
there you go. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. Well, this was the only one that he could find.
In his defense, Kev, that is Aaron Brooks, who is from Virginia.
That's right.
Very
That's
true.
right.
Very good
That's
point. Very
right.
good
So
point.
now we're going to get you guys Super Bowl picks, and first we're going to start with Vincent.
Well, speaking of San Francisco and Kaepernick, I think on that side, San Francisco, AFC, I'm going to go with Seattle this year.
All right.
Whoa.
You can't go with
can't
Seattle.
go with Seattle. They're both in the
Seattle's
same
NFC.
division.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've seen that,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Seattle used to be the AFC.
My mistake. I'm going to go with Baltimore again.
Oh, you're going to go with the
wow.
Ravens?
Really?
Same
They,
Super Bowl.
they just
Same
got
match.
their behinds handed to them by, the Broncos, but, they have 50 more games to make a difference. Chris?
Well, not just because they're my team, but
San
But
Francisco,
they are
to the 49ers?
I do like San Francisco. But you know what? I think this year, Denver is not going to make the accident they had against Baltimore this year. I think Denver is going to end up getting to the AFC Championship game, and I think those two teams, San Francisco and Denver, will be in the Super Bowl.
Afsheen?
I agree, actually. I think San Francisco and the Denver Broncos, but with this one caveat, I think the New Orleans Saints will be the surprise team out of the NFC with Sean Payton returning.
All right. Well,
I'm
let
also
you
going
have
with
the
San
last word.
Francisco and Denver, and I agree with that. I think Seattle could be a threat. New Orleans definitely could be a threat, but my pick is also San Francisco and Denver.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We're going to head into the break. This is the Nation's Capital Sports Show with Gary Digital Williams, Vincent Charles, Afsheen Benab, Chris Jerry. I'm Kevin Jeter. And you can check out our brand new website at tncss.net. This is the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on. We'll be right back after this. Thank you. Hey, welcome back to the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on. I'm Kevin Jeter, hanging out with Chris Jerry, Afsheen Benab, Vincent Charles, Gary Digital Williams. And we're going to talk about boxing, but before we get to that, Gary has been in broadcasting for over 25 years. As you guys probably don't know, but I had the opportunity to start working with Gary some 20 years ago at Spirits Known and Unknown. And Gary's done boxing. He writes for the Washington Informer, Howard University TV, and basketball, football, you just name it. He's all over the place, but his first love is boxing. Check out Gary's boxing blog at Boxing Along the Beltway and at blogspot.com. There you go. All right, so without further ado, here's Gary Williams.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Thanks, guys. Great to be with you. One of the things that a lot of folks don't know about this area is that we have a very good boxing scene, and we have some young talent. And throughout my almost 30 years of covering boxing, we've had 14 world champions, guys like Simon Brown, Maurice Blocker, William Joppy, Keith Holmes. We have a Hall of Famer now, Mark Too Sharp Johnson. And we have two current champions, actually. One is Lamont Peterson, and one is right out here in Ashburn, Virginia, and that's Tori Nelson. She's the WBC female middleweight champion and WIBA female middleweight champion. And we have some great young talent. What I'm loving about this boxing scene, we have the young talent right now. We have some great young guys and gals who are fighting in this area. One of them is a man by the name of Mike Yes Indeed Reed. He's in Waldorf, Maryland. 5-0, 4 KOs. On September 7th, he put on a great performance in his first 6-round bout, and he won it by 6-round TKO. Tremendous, actually 6-round knockout, because he knocked him in the middle of next week, really. But it was a tremendous show. And this guy comes from the amateurs, and where he won a 2011 National Golden Gloves Championship, and he's going on to great success. And he's one of those guys that people who know boxing in the area talk about him a little differently than others. We talk about how his footwork is and how great his ability, his intellect is, and his athletic ability is concerned, and just tremendous work that he has done so far. We look at guys like Jerry Odom out of Bowie, Maryland. We look at guys like Demetrius Ballard out of Temple Hills, Maryland. These are guys who had great amateur situations, have gone into the pros, young pros, some of them signed by major companies, and they're doing very well and representing the area very well also. So we have a great burgeoning boxing situation here in the area, and it's just fun to watch on a regular basis.
It's funny that you should mention that. And a lot of folks who sit around this table, I know including myself, I follow boxing as much as I can, but I got to admit to you that I don't know as much as I used to, and with your blog, Gary, and your knowledge of sports and your knowledge of boxing, it really brings the DC boxing scene to the full front. I mean, because a lot of the guys that you had just mentioned, I wouldn't have known that if I went to your site and started doing some research on them.
Well, that's one reason why I started the blog in the first place. I started the blog 8 years ago, and the reason why, because I found out that people outside the area knew how great our boxing scene was, through, if nothing else, through the amateurs who travel around the country and around the world. But not a whole lot of people knew inside the Beltway how good the boxing scene is. And that's why the blog was formed.
What about two boxers that I've followed a little bit over the past few months? Both of them from the D.C. area, of course. One from right inside D.C., one from Capitol Heights, Maryland.
Yeah.
The boxer from inside D.C. is Dusty Hernandez.
Right.
And the boxer from Capitol Heights, Gary Russell Jr., they're both undefeated. What are your thoughts on them, and how far can they go?
Well, those two guys, Dusty Hernandez Harrison and Gary Russell Jr., those are two of the guys that I've watched since they were about 8 or 9 years old, and which makes this even more fun for me nowadays. Dusty Harrison has experience well beyond his years. He had almost 200 amateur fights, and he really was a very solid and very poised amateur, even at the age of 10, 11, 12. When he turned pro at the age of 17, he was the youngest pro to do so. And I think a lot of people thought it may have been too soon. Some people said it was too late, because both these guys, he and Gary Russell, get some of the most traffic on the blog because a lot of people feel they're not being moved quickly enough. Gary Russell Jr., on the other hand, is a guy who went to the Olympics in 2008 in Beijing. Unfortunately, did not participate because he had dehydrated and couldn't perform. But again, a guy who is on a fast track, but many people criticize the opponents that he has faced. Dusty Harrison, by the way, may be on another card that features one of the top middleweights in the world in Gennady Golovkin. He may be on that card when he faces Curtis Stevens in a couple of months. So Dusty's on a fast track. He is really doing very well. He's handled very well by All In Entertainment of Washington, D.C. Of course, his father, Buddy Harrison's the trainer. And ironically, again, Gary Russell Jr.'s father is his trainer.
He's his trainer, right?
So when people talk about father-son groups not working very well, you're looking at two examples, and Mark Johnson's the third example of it happening very, very well within the D.C. region. But both these guys have very good futures ahead.
Yeah.
So, Gary, one of the things that's interesting, first of all, whenever I need to know about boxing, the guy or the errand person I look up is you, because
Right.
you're like a walking encyclopedia. But one of the things, you mentioned all these boxers from the nation's capital area. Where are the local boxing clubs? It seems like back in the day there used to be a lot. Where are they now?
Well, a lot of them are in either Maryland or Virginia. There are very few in D.C. right now. The only one in D.C. that I know of off the top of my head is Nomis Boxing Gym in Washington. And actually, at one point, they were the old Finley's Gym. I don't know if you heard about Finley's Gym in D.C., legendary gym in Washington. But you go to Prince George's County, you've got Round One, you've got Dream Team Boxing Gym. That's where Mike Reed trains, and also Seth Mitchell trains out of there after his most recent performance. I'm not sure he's going to be training there anymore, in all honesty. He got knocked out in the first round in his last bout. You have, I say round one, that's the legendary Adrian Davis's gym over there, round one. You have a few other gyms there. In Virginia, you have the Alexander Boxing Club over at Charles Houston Recreation Center. You have, if you go further up in Lynchburg, a little further up the Beltway, you have the Hurt Factory in Lynchburg with Scott Sigmund. Those are some of the gyms along the way that I know of off the top of my head.
All right.
But we
So-
still have them.
Wow. So my last question to you, then we're going to let Vincent jump in the segment. Whatever happened to the Manny Pacquiao and the Floyd Mayweather fight? Why is it that fight never came to be?
So many things can say that. Number one, the whole situation around the testing, the drug testing. I think both guys had different views at different times, and it hurt the situation. The money, I don't think was as big an issue. I just don't know whether or not these two guys are just not meant to meet each other. I don't know what it is. It's strange, and now that Mayweather gets $41 million guaranteed for his last fight, he may not need Pacquiao right now. And there's some people who believe that Pacquiao should retire after his last knockout loss.
But I think that's probably what the boxing viewing audience want to see, that fight, before something happens. So we're going to let Vincent jump in here real quick. Vincent, you got probably 20 seconds.
Okay, you mentioned the father-son training teams.
Right.
Who are some of the other trainers that have a good reputation in this area?
Well, you've got, again, Adrian Davis, who's trained some of his sons, but also trained some of the best boxers ever in this area. You have Andre Hunter, who trains Seth Mitchell. You've got some really good ones. Bruce Frank up in Stanton, Virginia, does a great job. We have some really, just some of the boxing trainers we have that are really, really good.
All right, thank you very much, Gary. Man, that was informative, man. Like attending class, man. I'm a pupil.
I love your site.
Your site is
Appreciate
good,
that.
man.
Thank you so much.
And it's featured on the brand new website of tncss.net. That's right. So come and check Gary's site out. It's under boxing. It's going to be up there forever. And so that's the way we want to have it. If you want to email us at our new email address at info@tncss.net. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Oh, man. And before we actually make our mad exit out of here, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for always providing good analytical and good fun and good banter. We want to thank Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
For
Thank
being
you.
here.
Great to be
Gary,
here.
you're invited back anytime
Look
you
forward to
want.
it. Be great.
You are a part of the nation's capital sports show.
Thanks, guys.
So we
Appreciate
get that
that.
ingrained
Thank you so much.
in you. So wanted to take time out before we get out of here to show you our brand new site, tncss.net. Over 31 pages of goodness that you can check out. And the good thing, I'll do that. I'll put that up.
Hey, there it is.
Check it out. It's your one-stop shopping for all of sports. We hope that you pass it along, and you can find Stitcher on there, our podcast shows, Facebook show. It's your one-stop shopping for everything. As a matter of fact, you can listen to the Washington Redskins while surfing our site at tncss.net. All right. Afsheen, before we get out of here, we got to say, promote the people that actually always make us sound and look good, and it starts with Devin Gallagher.
Yeah, Devin Gallagher is wonderful. David Aronson, Ken Briley, Kevin Sampson, who gave us a little bit of humor at the outset of the break in the show.
I loved it.
Yeah. Jane R. Stewart.
And Jax for,
That's right. Oh, yeah, making us look good.
Yeah.
Yep, Jackie Barrios, right. Jane R. Stewart, Dario Bequena, Kimberly Phillip, and L.J. Lacoma. You guys are great, and it's a pleasure to be here with each and every one of you. I know I speak for everybody.
That's right. And Kevin Sampson actually directed his first show.
Number uno, I believe.
Yeah.
At least our show,
That's right, our show. And then, of course, last week was JNR. And so it's pretty good. All right, so for the entire AIM cast, this is the Nation's Capital Sports Show. Gary Digital Williams, Vincent Charles, Afsheen Benab, Chris Jerry. I'm Kevin Jeter. We thank you, and we want you to have a great sporting day and a great sporting week. Thank you for listening to the Nation's Capital Sports Show. Thank you for watching the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on. Take care.